BMW was among the first automakers to create a bespoke EV, the i3, and then it also developed the i8, which was a special electrified-only sports car. However, even though BMW has had other EVs in its lineup since then, none of them have been dedicated EVs. All of them have been an electric version of a combustion model that the Bavarians already sell. And the latest I-badged BMW electric model is the iX1, which is the all-electric version of the X1. I think it's quite a good-looking thing. I won't linger too much on the exterior because, well, I don't think it's a big enough departure from its predecessor. Let's get a bit closer to the car. So you can tell that this is the iX1, the fully electric version of the X1, by the fact that it has blue details here, around the side here, as well as on the rear bumper. There are also I badges, so this is the iX1, the only model you can buy, the xDrive 30. Here you get a CCS connector, through which the car can charge at a maximum 130 kilowatts. You get blue surrounds for the BMW badges all around the vehicle, and you get a fully closed off grille. In other X1 models, this has slats that open and close when the vehicle needs extra cooling. But other than that, the X1 looks identical. This vehicle is essentially built on a development of the previous X1's platform, which it shares with models from the MINI brand. That means that in terms of its overall proportions and design, the new X1 and the iX1 aren't too different. They are just sharper and more modern and better looking, I think. I think it's one of BMW's best looking SUVs. I really like these rear lights. I think they are absolutely fantastic. I think they might be the best looking on any modern BMW, SUV or otherwise. They are very deep here. I think this somewhat harkens back to the fins of the 1960s, because I'm sure BMW will tell you that this protrudes here in order to give the car better aero. BMW has equipped the iX1 with a 68 kilowatt hour battery pack with a usable capacity of 64.7 kilowatt hours. It is located in the bottom of the vehicle around here. The iX1 is only available in a dual motor xDrive 30 configuration, and it tips the scales at just over 2,000 kilograms. You cannot buy a single motor version of this, although when one will be available, the motor will only be driving the front wheels because this is a front-wheel drive biased platform. My tester has two motors, both of which produce 190 horsepower. However, their outputs don't add up as you might expect. So together they only make 313 horsepower as opposed to 380. Ground clearance is pretty good in the regular X1, which gets 20 centimeters. That drops to 19 centimeters if you opt for an MPAC model, while the iX1, the electric version with the I here on the grille, that drops ground clearance to 17 centimeters. And I'm not sure whether or not if you spec the MPAC on this car, it drops it even lower. This is the X-Line model, so it's meant to look more off-road ready, although with that kind of ground clearance and given the kind of vehicle that this is, you shouldn't take it off-roading. But we'll find out how good it is off-road, because I found this post-apocalyptic wasteland around here that we will have to navigate. We're going that way, by the way, and we'll have to see if this ground clearance is enough. Let's move to the trunk. My tester is really well spec'd, so it has an electrically opening trunk. Why would it not open? It just needed a little bit of coaxing. The regular X1 has a 540 liter trunk, but the fully electric iX1 drops that to 490. It's still pretty good. It's a reasonably big trunk for a vehicle of this size, and as you can see, it's quite nice and square. Plus you get a little bit of extra storage here for cables and whatnot. If you fold everything down, you get around 1,500 liters, which is really good. I'm going to hop into the back and show you how much space there is. Let's see. So this is with the front seats in my driving position. So for an X1, which is a reasonably small crossover, and with a driver that is over 180 centimeters tall, there's still plenty of room in the back. One thing I'm not sure about is the fact that your knees seem to be pushed quite high. That's because the floor is also higher, or I think it is higher than in the regular X1, because the battery lives under there. And this pushes your knees up so that your legs, or your thighs rather, don't really touch the cushion, and you end up feeling a bit strained on longer journeys. Headroom is really generous though. It's really good. You get an armrest with cup holders. You also get a reclining backrest for the back seat. Now it is in its most reclined position and it's really comfy. One feature the X1 gets and the iX1 doesn't is a sliding rear bench. I assume this has something to do with the battery pack and the rear motor being somewhere around here, and I assume this prevented BMW from adding the rails under the seats. Although frankly, I don't think a sliding rear seat is the most useful feature, so I don't think it's such a big loss. Let me show you what else is back here and then I'll move to the front. So you don't have separate climate controls in the back, but you do get 2 vents and 2 USB-Cs. The plastic on top of the doors in the back is not amazing, but it's not horrible either. Let's move to the front. When you get in the front, you notice instantly that there's Sensatech on top of the doors, and the material is a little bit soft. It's way nicer feeling than in the back. There's even some stitching here. You get these smaller iDrive 8 displays, but they work fine. You also get a slightly different steering wheel compared to other new BMWs. The design is basically the same, but the buttons I think are a bit different. The leather isn't of the highest quality, I would say. I'm not a huge fan of this leather. Just like in the 2 Series Active Tourer, BMW has completely eliminated physical controls for the climate and most other functions. All that's left are these 2 defrost buttons. But other than that, everything has been moved to this menu. I've covered this in other recent BMW videos, so I'm not going to go over it again. This is the home screen of iDrive 8, and you have to tap on climate menu and then you adjust your various settings. BMW has tried to eliminate as many buttons as possible, which is why it has grouped similar functions into menus. For instance, this menu will take you to your driving settings. This one takes you to your lighting menu, and you have several settings here as well. My tester has optional sport seats as well as this brown leather, which really makes this interior look nice and premium. It's quite a nice quality material, even though it's not real leather. BMW is getting really good at this. Just like in the 2 Series Active Tourer, you no longer get a rotary control for the infotainment, and you don't get a lever for the transmission anymore. And you use this dinky little thing to put the car into drive, brake mode, neutral, and reverse. And this button is dedicated to the park function. I will say that I had a little problem with the cup holders because I think they are a bit too wide and a half-liter bottle just wobbles around in there, to be honest. I don't have one to demonstrate, but I'm sure that you can actually fit a 1-liter bottle in there. This is the wireless charger for your phone, and you use this roller coaster type thing to secure it in place. Generally, being aboard the iX1 is a really pleasant experience, especially in one that's as well spec'd as this one is. I will tell you how much my tester costs at the end of the video. I think that's enough for a brief walk-around presentation and brief interior overview of the vehicle, so I'm now going to take it for a drive. Let's see if 17 centimeters of ground clearance is enough to negotiate this post-apocalyptic wasteland that I'm driving through right now. Driving over this uneven and broken tarmac, I am reminded of one of the X1's most remarkable qualities, and that is its impressive level of comfort. I mean, it's quite remarkable that a vehicle based on BMW's smallest platform is this nice and this cosseting over such a bad surface. I noticed this on the road, obviously. It really irons out bumps. But here, where I would expect to be flung around in the car over these bumps, it's actually really good. Okay, so let's try to get out of here. If I remember how I came in, that is. The surface I'm driving over now is really uneven. I haven't had a chance to test an X1 or an iX1 without the adaptive dampers that my tester has, but with them equipped, this vehicle is super impressive in terms of comfort. It's not the sportiest feeling BMW, but it's so comfortable that you can forgive it that. And even over these huge dips in the road, I'm still mostly staying in one place. I'm not moving around. And once you're on smooth tarmac, this really becomes a very relaxing vehicle. It was relaxing over the rough stuff. It of course has independent suspension on all 4 corners, and I'm sure the adaptive dampers, which are in their comfort setting right now, they do help. This car is also surprisingly maneuverable, although it's not excessively maneuverable. I mean, it's not as maneuverable as the BMW with rear-wheel drive, whose wheels can turn to a greater angle. However, with an 11.8 meter turning circle diameter, the iX1 is pretty good. The 30 xDrive model that I'm driving today is currently the only variant on offer. I'm sure BMW will eventually offer a single motor version of this, and it will probably make 190 horsepower and it will have one motor driving the front axle, and that should improve upon the 440 kilometer WLTP claimed range. When I picked this car up from BMW, it was fully charged all the way to 100%, and I had an indicated range of 373 kilometers. I charged it again today to 95%, and I got it up to 320 kilometers of range. Still good, but not amazing, and quite a bit off the claimed number. I'm sure you can achieve 400 kilometers if you drive this at a constant speed of 70-80 kilometers per hour. At 100 kilometers per hour, you're exceeding the claimed efficiency. BMW says that this car should use around 17 to 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That would be its official electricity consumption. However, I reset the trip computer when I picked up the car, and I haven't been driving it especially quickly, and my current average is 25.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. I've driven the car almost exclusively in town, like 80% in town, 20% out of town, and most of it was quite leisurely driving. I didn't put the car in its efficient mode. I kept it normal and expressive, but it so far hasn't proven very efficient. I'm not really sure what you would have to do to get into the 18s, but it seems impossible. I mean, I know lab tests are done in the lab and their results cannot be replicated in the real world. I'd say that you can achieve 300 kilometers in this car without trying too hard, without trying to drive it especially efficiently. If you want to test out its acceleration all the time, which by the way is pretty good, it sprints to 100 kilometers per hour in a claimed 5.6 or 5.7 seconds depending on spec, and that's a very decent number for a 2-ton vehicle like this. The level of in-gear punch that you feel in this vehicle, it makes it feel like it's even more powerful than the figures would suggest and the claimed acceleration time would suggest. And that's thanks to the 494 Newton meters of torque. It does what all EVs do. It pushes you into your seat really, really hard. It's really, really quick in a straight line. And it feels really muscular and nice and pleasant. The power delivery is instant. This comes courtesy of BMW's clever motors, which are neither synchronous nor asynchronous. The instant torque delivery of a synchronous motor with the ability to coast that an asynchronous motor grants you. BMW did this by replacing the magnet in the rotor with a coil that the car turns on or off depending on what it needs to do. And this type of hybrid motor that BMW has conceived brings the best of both worlds. It grants the vehicle remarkable response when you prod the go pedal, and you can also coast when the vehicle deems that this is the more efficient thing to do. This vehicle's top speed is 180 kilometers per hour. So if you're a German living in Germany and you want to take full advantage of the Autobahn, other EVs are quicker at the top end, although not significantly so. There's nothing wrong with the acceleration, but when you brake the 2 tons, woo-hoo-hoo, you're reminded just what you're driving. I'm not sure what's up, but this doesn't feel like a BMW steering rack. BMW steering was traditionally heavy, but if I put this car into its regular mode, the steering becomes light and not very connected feeling, to be honest. The 2 Series Active Tourer that I drove last year did feel like this to a degree, but I think this is even more vague and disconnected than in that car. And given that my car doesn't have a stiffened M suspension, it's also quite wobbly. Sure, you can stiffen everything up in sport mode and the car is still comfortable, I would add, but this isn't a vehicle that really wants to make me attack corners at any kind of speed. Not to say that there are many SUVs that will edge you on to drive quicker into a corner, but I would say that BMW's own iX, which is a bigger, heavier vehicle, is far more fun and chuckable than this. This just washes wide and it's I don't know, it's fun, it's definitely fun, but that's mostly down to how much power this car has. Okay, the steering is reasonably communicative when it's under load, but I don't know, something is missing. Let's put it back into sport. It does a great job of putting the power down. That's 100, for instance. Okay, so putting it in sport mode does change things up a bit. but it still understeers. This is definitely a nice driving experience, somewhat sporty, but more comfort-oriented. And even though it's comfort-oriented, it doesn't lean that much in the bends. I can't help but feel that this is just another transitional vehicle that BMW made because it had to. I mean, I started this video by talking about the i3, which was a bespoke EV that BMW actually put some heart and soul into developing, which is why it was at one point the world's second best-selling EV after the Nissan Leaf. It was really good. The i3 is still a good second-hand EV buy. It's one of the ones I would choose for poodling around the city. The iX1, on the other hand, is just an X1 with a big battery, and it has several negatives because of that. Like I said, when you sit in the back, your knees are pushed up, you lose a little bit of trunk space, so around 50 liters compared to the combustion engine X1, and you also lose the sliding rear bench. BMW also decided not to give this vehicle a frunk, even though there clearly was enough space under there to do that. I mean, for instance, rivals like the Volvo XC40 Recharge, which by the way is considerably quicker with 100 extra horsepower almost. Interesting now that the Volvo is quicker than the equivalent BMW. What a time to be alive, am I right? The iX1 needs to be successful. It is BMW's entry-level EV, so it's a vehicle that it expects to sell in quite a number. So my tester is an iX1 xDrive 30, which is the only variant that you can currently buy. In Romania, it starts at 54,799 euros. My tester has the X-Line pack, which makes it look slightly more off-road oriented, with fake skid plates on the front and rear bumpers, as well as slightly different side sills, I think. That costs 1,333 euros with VAT included. Driving Assistant Professional, that costs over 2,000 euros. The professional equipment packs are another 3,700 euros. The comfort pack is 1,281. The electrically adjustable front seats with memory function are 277. The travel pack, which includes the opening glass roof, the net in the trunk, and the rear privacy glass, is another 1,400 euros. And along with a few other options, including the Harman Kardon sound system, heated seats, and a few others, that adds up to 20,375 euros in options alone. Which means if we combine the base price with the price of the options, that means this iX1 costs 75,174 euros. And the stunning exterior finish is, of course, the famous BMW Frozen Grey Pure. This car really makes you feel more special than I was expecting it to. I mean, it looks really good on the outside, especially if you opt for Frozen Grey and the stunning 19-inch wheels that are on this car. It even turns heads. But don't buy the iX1 thinking that it's going to be a sporty and sharp BMW, because it's more of a comfort-oriented vehicle, even though it can really propel itself in a straight line. So what do you think of the iX1? Let me know in the comments. Would you buy one over its rivals, or would you just buy a Tesla Model Y like everybody else is doing? Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video, and take care.